Blood dripped from my mouth onto the polished linoleum floor, each drop echoing louder than the nurse's scream. Ryan's shadow loomed above me, his fist still trembling with rage. The papers in his other hand fluttering like white flags of surrender he'd never offer. "Choose how you pay or get out," he snarled, shoving the contract toward me. I could taste iron, fear, and disbelief all at once as I realized the man who once called me sister was now a stranger, demanding my father's legacy at the edge of his rage. People scattered. Chairs screeched. Someone yelled for help. The nurse's voice cracked as she called 911. But Ryan didn't flinch. "Sign it now," he barked. "Or I'll make sure you never set foot in Dad's house again." I tried to stand, but the stitches from my surgery screamed in protest, each breath sharp as broken glass. Pain wasn't new to me, but this humiliation bleeding on a clinic floor while my own bloodline demanded a signature cut deeper than any wound. I stared at him, at the face I once thought carried a trace of our father's kindness, now twisted into something monstrous. "You think I'll sell my father's memory for $10,000? I whispered, my voice barely holding. His eyes narrowed, that cruel smile spreading like a stain. "5 tomorrow," he hissed. "Better decide fast." "Yulia." Behind him. The nurse trembled, her eyes darting between us and the door, waiting for sirens that couldn't come soon enough. When the red and blue lights finally painted the walls, Ryan took a step back, smoothing his tie as if none of it had happened. He told the officers I was hysterical, that families fought after funerals, that grief made people say wild things. But I saw the flicker in his eyes when they cuffed him, a flash of fear wrapped in hatred. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about grief. It was about greed. And the war for my father's legacy had just begun. 3 days after the funeral, the house felt hollow, stripped of everything that had once been safe. My father's chair still faced the window. His coffee mug sat untouched, and the scent of cedar from his workshop lingered in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. I moved slowly through the rooms, every step a reminder that I'd lost not just him, but the child I had prayed for, the future that had slipped away in a hospital bed stained with grief. People said time would heal, but time was silent, and silence was cruel. When the door opened without a knock, I already knew who it was. Ryan strode in with Lydia close behind, her perfume sweet enough to mask the rot underneath her pity. "Yulia." "Sweetheart," she said softly. Her voice dipped in sympathy, but her eyes fixed on the framed photographs along the wall. Ryan placed a folder on the counter, the same marble my father once used to roll dough for Sunday pies, and said flatly, "Dad left everything to Mom and me. You get 10,000 if you sign today." "Ah," I laughed, the sound sharp and hollow. "That's impossible. Dad would never cut me out." He smirked, tapping the papers as if the sound alone could make them true. "This is the real will. Signed 2 weeks before he died. Guess he got tired of your drama." The word hit me harder than I expected. "That single?" Dismissive stab reducing my pregnancy. My loss. To gossip. I told him I wanted to see the real will, the one kept with Dad's lawyer. But Ryan leaned closer, his breath sour with arrogance. "You've got 24 hours. Jules," he said. "After that, you're out." Lydia sighed as if the whole scene bored her, her fingers brushing across the family portrait before she turned away. When the door slammed behind them, I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the unbearable quiet of everything my father had built, slipping into someone else's hands. Helen Cartwright's house smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper, the kind of place where truth had weight and silence had purpose. She'd been my father's closest friend for 20 years. the kind of woman who saw through charm the way others saw through glass. When she opened the door and saw my bruised cheek, she didn't gasp or pity me. She simply said, "Come in." "Honey." I made coffee. I followed her inside, the warmth almost painful after days of cold looks and colder threats. We packed what was left of my life from the car trunk to her spare room, my clothes still damp from the lawn where Ryan had tossed them. Helen muttered under her breath, "Your father would never leave you out like that. Not after everything." I told her about the will, about the fake signatures and Ryan's rage, and she nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing the way they did when she smelled a lie. "He's hiding something," she said. "And if I know men like him, he's sloppy about it." When she wheeled out her old laptop, I almost laughed. "You're not seriously hacking into company records at your age," I said. She smiled without looking up. "Age just means I've had longer to learn where people bury their sins." Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced ease. Screens, flashing numbers and dates I barely understood. The calm in her tone made me realize she wasn't guessing, she was certain there was rot in the books. "Look here," she whispered, pointing to a list of phantom payments and missing funds. "He's been bleeding the company for years." "Yulia." I felt the floor tilt beneath me as she kept scrolling. Uncovering shell accounts, false invoices, entire layers of deceit my father had never seen. "We're not just talking theft," she said quietly. "This is federal. And if he's desperate enough, he'll do worse." Her voice was steady, but something in her eyes told me she already suspected that he had. The house was darker than I remembered, the air thick with the kind of quiet that comes after something sacred has been broken. Helen's flashlight cut a thin line through the dust as she whispered, "If your father hid anything, he'd do it where he worked." I led her to the basement, the one place Ryan never bothered to repair. And there it was, the water heater that hummed softly beside a patch of uneven drywall. My heart pounded with something that felt like fear and hope tangled together as I pressed my palm against the wall and felt the hollow behind it. Helen handed me a small screwdriver without a word, and the panel gave way with a low groan. Inside sat a metal safe, the kind my father used to joke could outlast an earthquake. I punched in my mother's birthday, and the lock clicked like a breath released after years of holding it in. The light caught the edge of a leather folder, a stack of documents, and an envelope marked in my father's handwriting. I opened the letter first. His words were uneven, written with a trembling hand but clear enough to crush me. He believed Ryan had been tampering with his medication, that Lydia encouraged it, and that he'd been gathering proof in secret. Helen's voice shook when she said, "He knew. Yulia." He knew what they were doing. I could barely speak as I unfolded the financial ledgers showing Ryan's thefts. Each page, a confession written in numbers. At the bottom of the safe, there was another folder, older and yellowed, filled with news clippings. Helen read the headlines aloud, her voice turning colder with each name. 3 husbands. All dead. All wealthy. All married to Lydia Mercer. The silence that followed was heavier than grief. My father hadn't been paranoid, he'd been hunted. And now, his warnings had become our map for revenge. Charles Dunn's office smelled of old paper and decaf coffee, the kind of place where secrets were meant to be confessed, not buried. When I placed my father's letter and the files on his desk, he adjusted his glasses and said, "Your dad came to me 6 weeks before he died. He was scared, but he wanted proof before accusing anyone." His hands trembled only once, then steadied as he read the documents. "This will," he murmured, "is authentic. What Ryan has is a forgery, and a sloppy one at that." "Dooner." Helen leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp. "We found evidence of embezzlement and falsified invoices. If you push this to the state, It'll expose him. Charles nodded. We'll need to act fast. Probate hasn't closed yet. And if Ryan transfers assets, they'll vanish. I asked, what about Lydia? And he sighed. The kind of sigh that carried too many years of experience. She's worse. I've seen her name before in cases that never made it to trial. Aita. Detective Maria Fox arrived that afternoon. Trenchcoat half-buttoned. Eyes alert in a way that made me sit straighter. You're Julia Monroe, she said, shaking my hand. I've been watching Lydia Mercer for 3 years. She's got a trail of dead husbands and quiet settlements behind her. I felt my pulse quicken as she flipped through my father's files. You've done half my job already, she said. Now we need to make them talk. End quote. Charles drew a line across his notepad, his tone turning deliberate. We'll set a trap. Ryan's greedy if he thinks you're surrendering. He'll show up himself. I nodded, knowing exactly what he meant. Helen gave me a look equal parts warning and pride. You're walking into a storm. Honey, she whispered. Just make sure you're the one holding the lightning. When I called Ryan, I made sure my voice carried the right kind of defeat. You win, I said quietly. I'll sign whatever you want. Just give me Mom's jewelry box back. His laugh came fast. Smug and hollow. Finally seeing reason. Huh? Meet me at the company office tomorrow. Bring whoever you need to witness it. I want this clean. The line clicked dead before I could breathe again. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something sharp and steady inside me that wasn't fear. Helen didn't like it. You're baiting a snake, she said. And snakes bite when cornered. AGPC's Charles, on the other hand, was already drafting the paperwork. If he wants witnesses, he said, we'll give him witnesses with badges. Detective Fox nodded, her expression unreadable. We'll wire you up. Julia, just keep him talking. He's too arrogant to shut up once he starts bragging. I told her I could handle it, though I wasn't sure if my voice or my courage would hold when I saw him again. The next morning, the office felt colder than memory allowed. Ryan was already behind my father's desk, feet up, confidence oozing from every smirk. Let's make this quick, he said, sliding the papers across the table. Sign here, and here, and I'll even throw in 20,000 for your trouble. I glanced at Lydia standing near the door, a bottle of champagne dangling from her hand. Celebrating early? I asked. She smiled thinly. Just closure. Dear, something you've never been good at. I picked up the pen, forcing my hand to shake just enough. Before I sign, I said, I need to know what I'm signing away. Ryan rolled his eyes. You give up everything, the company, the house, the accounts. In exchange, I don't drag this through court. I asked. And the employees? Dad's profit-sharing plans? He laughed. Not my problem. Company's being sold tomorrow for $3 million. Could have been 10. But I like things fast. His words slid across the table like confessions dressed as business talk. Then I looked at Lydia, her calm too deliberate. Tell me, how long did it take to plan this? Before or after you started slipping him extra pills? Her eyes flickered. Excuse me? I met her gaze. The coffee. The triple dose of digitalis. It killed him slowly. Didn't it? Ryan's face went pale. You don't know what you're talking about. I smiled faintly. I know enough. Especially the part where you emailed her, old man took his pills like clockwork. 2. The notary at his side froze mid-signature. Lydia's voice sharpened. You can't prove anything. I kept my eyes on her and said, You're right. I don't have to. Ryan lunged across the desk. and the door burst open as Detective Fox stepped in, her badge gleaming like judgment. "Ryan Mercer. Lydia Mercer, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and the murder of Thomas Monroe." He shouted that it was entrapment, but no one cared. I watched the papers scatter across the desk. Every signature they'd forced, every lie they'd written, undone in the same room where my father once built everything from nothing. The courtroom smelled of varnish and nerves, the air thick with the hum of whispered disbelief. Ryan sat at the defense table, his suit too crisp for a man unraveling, while Lydia's calm face betrayed nothing but calculation. The prosecutor spoke first, his voice cutting through the silence like a verdict before the verdict. "The defendants conspired to murder Thomas Monroe for financial gain," he said. "They poisoned him slowly, falsified company records, and forged his will." Dotto. Ryan shifted in his chair, muttering to his lawyer, "They can't prove intent." But the prosecutor was already laying out the timeline emails, invoices, and the toxicology reports that matched the medication from Lydia's home. I watched him sink lower with each exhibit, his arrogance dissolving under the weight of evidence. Lydia never looked at him. Her eyes stayed forward, like she was waiting for the next name on her list. When the prosecutor read the line from Ryan's own email, "Old man took his pills like clockwork," the jury's faces turned from curiosity to disgust. Tessa Morgan, his young girlfriend, testified next, her voice trembling beneath too much perfume. "He said the old man was dying anyway," she admitted. "He said it was mercy and money." Her words landed like stones, unpolished but deadly. The defense tried to discredit her, but the damage had already been done. Even the judge leaned back, shaking his head as if the story had crossed from greed into something colder. When the verdict came, it was almost gentle. Guilty on all counts. Ryan closed his eyes as if he'd been expecting it, while Lydia only adjusted her jacket, still pretending the world owed her an apology. I didn't cry. Not because I was numb, but because the truth had already done the weeping for me. Justice, I realized, didn't roar. It whispered, and everyone in that room heard it. The cemetery was quiet that afternoon, the kind of silence that doesn't ask for words. I stood by my father's grave with a letter in my hand, the one Charles had given me after the trial. His handwriting was uneven but steady in spirit. "If you're reading this, it means you made it. I'm proud of you. Yulia, protect what's worth keeping." I traced the ink with my thumb, realizing he had always trusted I'd finish what he started. Helen said softly beside me, "He'd be proud. You know, you saved everything he built." I smiled, not because I felt victorious, but because peace had a different kind of weight. "He taught me how to build things that last," I told her. "And not all of them were made of wood and nails." She nodded, her voice gentle as wind through the trees. "Grief breaks you open. Honey, that's where the light gets in." It's Wesdemona. The company survived, stronger than I ever imagined. The employees got their pensions back, and the foundation we created in his name began funding apprenticeships for young builders. For the first time, the walls of my father's office no longer felt haunted, they felt alive again. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling at his old mug, still sitting where he left it, as if waiting for another morning to begin. Before I left, I placed a single daisy on his headstone and whispered, "You can rest now, Dad. They can't hurt us anymore." The breeze carried the scent of cut grass and sawdust, the two things he loved most. As I turned away, I felt the quiet shift from grief to gratitude. Strength. I finally understood. Wasn't the absence of pain, it was what you built after surviving it. If this story found you, let it remind you that truth doesn't fade. It waits for someone brave enough to uncover it. I'm grateful you stayed until the end. If you believe strength can be born from loss, subscribe and share this story. Somewhere, another voice needs to hear it.